right, so let's start the afternoon session. In this presentation, I will talk about the non-technical barriers to data management with application in material characterization and modeling projects. This actually is, I would say, a present connect to a white paper. So we have been writing white paper over the past few months, and this delivered a key insight of this white paper. This is work shared between me and Alexandre, who is online. So we met a year ago, approximately in Vienna, with the sister project of the MatCHMaker project. We had a workshop on the data lifecycle pain point and good practices. So MatCHMaker was one of the organizers, and we also had this standard. So we have Julian Demarchi, who was a member of the standard. Nostra X, CoBrain, Admo Power, and Ed for Greenest were the sister projects who were involved in writing the white paper and in this workshop a year ago. The main thesis of this white paper is that the technical infrastructure for fair data already exists. It has matured, but it is not really adopted. And the constraint is mostly not just the technology, but the human, organizational, and policy environment in which the technology is asked to operate. So we focus more indeed on this aspect in this white paper. And what we have done was to conduct interviews with members of each of these different projects to how to say, get insights on where they see the adoption barriers and what we could do to solve it. And we will actually submit very soon white paper. So we had these 8 semi-structured interviews with people who actually are knowledgeable about data management. They are work package leads, data pillar leads, coordinator across the different projects, and some are actually involved in other projects like Ping, Compass, and Ontotrans, which are ongoing. We also had a survey, so we didn't have so many responses because maybe it's just time consuming, I don't know, but we had high hopes and then we had to scale back, but still we got some responses. And we also used the framework called ADKAR for change management, which is about behavioral change. So how do you change how people behave regarding an innovation? So we had these semester interviews, and there are some limitations because this is, of course, not a wide empirical survey across all fields involving specialized people knowing about innovation and sociology, but still it gives first insights. So it could be, let's say, a first trigger for a more scientific, let's say, approach to why data management tools are not being used. And we have 8 main findings. The first one is time is the master barrier, which means that time pressure dominates every other constraint. People usually are aware about data management, but it always is not an urgent task. So it falls at the bottom of the to-do list and it never pops up at the priority list. That's one thing which was very systematic with all the interviewees as an obvious thing, but still worth mentioning. The second thing which also appeared is that the DMPs, so the data management plant, act as a compliance artifact, which are filed for the funder, but very rarely used for coordination. The third point, which was actually perhaps more new, is that the project rise or fall on so-called double hat people. So they're typically people who are domain experts, so who are chemists, physicists, material scientists, who hit the issue of data management after the end of the project, and then by themselves educate themselves, learn data management tricks, tools, and then are able to talk to the communities. And that means that these people are able to coordinate the efforts, to take decisions, and to organize the work in a productive way. Because they can read unstructured data from different stakeholders, understand the meaning, and then start to build the tool. Fourth finding, the bottleneck is more the subculture, not the sector. So at the beginning, we had the idea that there is academia and there is industry. Industry is supposed to be good because they have long-term projects, so they are knowledgeable about data management, and academia would be bad. It's not the case. It's really more about subculture. So what we mean is, for instance, what we have seen that people who are doing modeling are usually more aware of the need of data management because they generate a lot of data themselves. So they have hit these before, and they developed tools which perhaps experimentalists with much smaller data sets are not so aware of. But you also have seen many differences from lab to lab, from industry to industry. So it's really not an easy um, how would say classification of the different categories. Another thing which also was found is that the value of data management accrues at the end of the project because we only have data problem when we have data, and at the beginning we don't have data basically. And also the cost is borne by the producer of the data, but the benefit will be for the future user. So also the motivation to do it is perhaps not so high. There is the way, the cascade management, also way of managing the EU projects, which are a sequence every year or a year and a half, which is not agile. And actually, in a data science project, there is the concept of agile management or Scrum, which is completely different way of organizing the work in teams. Ontology also arrived too late. They arrive typically at the end of the project or perhaps even after. And finally, there was a point that perhaps the lump sum approach may weaken cross-partner data work. We'll get into more detail now. So the first barrier was time, indeed. So we have different stakeholders, of course, in a project, in an EU project. The researcher in academia are pressured to publish or perish, as we know. Now we have many actually partners in academia who have for their PhD to publish 3 papers to be awarded their PhDs, which put, of course, enormous amount of pressure on them to publish early. And therefore, data management fall at the bottom of the to-do list. But even for PI, there is a pressure to publish. And again, this is not valued in publication to have a clean data management. In industry, it might be just the commercial deliverable which take precedence, or the fact there is many projects to handle, and this goes first on the to-do list. So it just loses competition on a daily basis against other tasks. Data management as a compliance artifact. So we had actually quite some blunt response. So I'm quoting here. Some were saying it's filed, somewhat followed, or even effectively meaningless, even someone said. And the issue is not absent, is that they are not actually used for internal coordination. Double hat. So, as I said before, people may refer to them as shepherds or the one PhD who came from industry or whatever, which are these people who are actually supporting a lot of the effort, and it's not a clear role, and they are scarce. And that was raised in many of the interviews. And also the issue that they tend to be overloaded with work and unrecognized by the reward system because they do it on themselves. There is no reward system for this type of roles. Subculture. So I said it's not industry versus academia. It's more how each lab, each group has its own culture of dealing with data, of structuring data. And of course, they exist for a long time. So they have their own working workflows with that, which are longer than the time of the project. So the effort to change for 3 or 4 years is very high. And this is about culture. So it's not something which can be fixed easily. So as we wrote, to ask partner to change, asking them to override years of practices regardless of sector. So it's really, when you have 10 partners, we have 10 cultures to handle. And that's not something which can be done with just technical solution. It will not work. Deferred values. So I said at the beginning of the project, by definition, we don't have data. So we realized and we hit the wall in the middle of the project. But again, time pressure builds up. And at the end of the project, we have a lot of data. But then the short term to deliver everything makes it hard to build finally the good data management structure. And also, indeed, the value is for future users. not for themselves. So it's a collective action problem, not a failure of individual virtue. Reporting cascade, too slow for data management task. As said, if you go in a bookshop and you take a book on data management or data science in team, they will all talk about agile management. So they work in sprint of 1 month. Maybe 1 month is too short, but perhaps a quarter or semester would be a more reasonable time than a year and a half. Actually, there was one person from the front offer, one interview from the front offer, who was saying that internally they were actually having quarterly feedback and readjusting the data management plan every quarter as a function of what they found as a bottleneck. So they would have an iteration every 3 months and adapt in an agile way or more agile way the, the, the actual data management during the meeting. Finding number 6, 7 was similar. Okay, ontology readiness arrives late. This was, I think, one of the example that one project started in November 2022, finished in 2025, and then the cameo was derived after it. So, or even like just in the same year, so too late indeed, because it takes time to build an ontology. And lump sum funding may weaken cross-partner data work, because then people may have their own agenda, may use the funding of the EU to carry their agenda, and they have less check perhaps there. It's a may because, of course, lump sum have other advantages. So it's not easy. It's just we're just saying somewhere raising this as a risk of this approach. Okay, so now we are going to talk about change management through the ADKAR framework. So this is a framework used for diagnostic and implementation of change in the behavior of people using technology. And you have these different categories: so awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. As scientists and engineers, we need to believe that we need to bring knowledge and we will solve everything. So we bring a tool and then people will spontaneously change the behaviors. And that's far from reality. So here I address just one at a time the obvious thing that we saw. Awareness is partial, but it's mostly there. I would say, of course, those people we interviewed are very aware of data management, or people who are leading, who have experience with EU project also know the issue because they had it in the past. But starting PhD student or new PIs may be less aware of it. Desire is the failing mode. As said, the cost is borne by the producer, but the benefit is for the future user. So the effort and the motivation is not always there. And time pressure also is one thing. Knowledge. So we actually have knowledge. We have tools. So I said, like, we tend to be obsessed with knowledge as scientists, but it's not sufficient. Ability is constrained. So there are many tools actually already developed. There are many, perhaps, repo, ontology, and so on. And not everybody is, I would say, familiar and able to use it without, with ease, let's say. And reinforcement is mostly absent. For instance, midterm review with actual check of implementation and use of the DMP are not there. There is no sanction and no reward also. Okay, so this is now breaking a bit more down these different blocks. The one that are the most, how to say, limiting, it's not awareness, it's not knowledge, it's desire, ability, and reinforcement. And this is where the finding bites. So desire, there is this time pressure that we mentioned, there is a default value, and the subculture inertia, which were related to this. So if you want to increase the desire, we need to solve these things. So if you can find a way to give time, to have value within the project, or to help with cultural change, we may address these points. Ability, so time pressure is already there, but this double hat capacity is also something which is sitting there. And then one point was source attached metadata, so to automatically generate metadata for any data produced by any machine or model in the project. And reinforcements mean data management plan as a compliance or more regularly, and a faster reporting cadence, at least for the data management task during the project. These are 5 concrete reform proposals for FP10, which came as we were discussing. I can share the slide after if you want. I see that some people take pictures, so we can share the slide and the white paper. First one was to have a budget line for data management steward, which is automatically there and which is independent of the. So it's just like to give 1 to 3% of direct costs for a steward. A test review of the actual implementation midterm of the data management plan. 3, to have metadata model anchoring at proposal stage. 4th, so this is to motivate to create some kind of badge perhaps or a reward system instead of a sanction to motivate people to engage and to have projects which are I would say well managed in terms of data. And finally, a possibility was to have a scaled EU data management as shared service that people can have access during the project. This is an example of applying these ideas on the case of a cement project, month 0 to 48, that also came. It's just a suggestion. So we just put ideas. We do not say it's perfect, but this gives an idea of how we could imagine a better data managed project in this field. So we typically have instrument characterization instrument like XRD, SCM, mortar strength in cement science. We also usually use machine learning model and finite element simulation. What you could imagine is to build automated metadata production at each of the source of these machines before we go into the database. So we have an automated flow of structured and documented data that go into the database. And you also have one shared data space where people exchange information. So not through emails, not through Dropbox, but this will be put in place at the very beginning. Then, before each reporting period, we could imagine to have 3 months before the reporting period, 1 month of intensive work with the data steward, who would interview all the people who produce data in the project and with them help to build a data model for what they are producing. So we'll discuss that in detail in the next slide. And this would be iterated at reporting period 2 and at the end. So there is this reinforcement thing that comes at least a few times during the project. So this is one of the gates. So as said, it could be like 4 sessions 3 months before the reporting period. We could have 1 hour per week with the data steward, each data producer, and the web package lead. So the web package lead typically has domain knowledge, which the data steward do not have. And the data producer typically has no clue about data management. He's just generating data. So that would be the web package lead helping a smooth discussion between the steward and the data producer 4 times. Then we can upgrade the metadata and the data model quality. But also what we do is we help the user, so the data producer or the web package lead, in producing the deliverable themselves. So because they have to produce it because this is the reporting period, so they can already see the value within the time of the project. And of course, it's iterated, so there is also this cumulative impact for the final deliverable, and this would basically help with the desired issue that we saw in the ADCAR framework. These are just ideas, but it just to get a more, let's say, concrete picture of how it could look like. Okay, this is just one slide to show some value of how much money is poured by different data-related initiatives. In Germany, there is the NFDI with 90 million per year. UK has devoted a lot of money for AI, actually, which includes some parts on data management. And also in the USA, there was quite some budget dedicated there. And I put just on the right, just as a matter of comparison, ballpark number for USC, skills for USC, and for impact. And this is not, for instance, close to the value in Germany or UK. But just to say that, okay, we also perhaps need resources if you want to put the infrastructure efforts in EU. So this is the conclusion slide where the change has to happen. So of course the EC has some levers, but not all of them. We mentioned some for the EC, like setting a steward line. I will read it. Sorry for the color, contrast is not perfect. So the steward line, the midterm review, the model anchoring, the badge, shared service scaling, and lump sum evaluation. But also the research organization may need to adapt in how they recognize the data work, the hiring, and the proposal evaluation. So to hire people who are already, I would say, having skills and demonstrated skills in data management and digital tool may be relevant, or to even in each project embed a work package dealing with data management. Project coordinators. So it could be how to run the consortium. We mentioned this agile management and not a cascade management. That could be something to put, at least for the data management, to have a cadence every quarter. Perhaps having indeed a badge that they could, or to train people within the project. And finally, of course, the researcher need to be addressed because they do the work, and how the system can recognize this work that people like double hat people are doing to motivate the investment, and also to give them value. So to have a way to show them that they can leverage value within the time of the project of a good data management practices. And that's it. Thank you for your attention. I want to acknowledge the interviewees and the partner projects who were really helpful in building up this white paper. Thank you for your attention.